Hello and welcome back to the Stay Sure Wellbeing YouTube channel. I'm Dr. Dawn Harper, and in this video I'll be covering how to stay safe in the sun. So I'll be covering who needs to protect themselves and how, but also how to recognise and manage things like heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So let's start with who needs to protect themselves. We all do. Those most at risk are young children, people with very fair skin, people who don't tan very easily or have lots of freckles or moles. And for you, you really do need to take extra care. But actually, even having a suntan will only offer you the same protection as around an SPF 2 to 4. So having darker skin doesn't protect you. You still need to look after yourself. So let's think about sun protection factor and sunscreen. When you look at sunscreen, you will notice that they have an SPF, that's sun protection factor, which will range anything from 2 to 50 plus. We recommend that you use at least 15 and possibly 30 on young children or those more at risk. You will also notice that there is a star rating. The star rating runs from 1 to 5, and you really need to be looking at a star rating of 4 or 5. This shows you the protection of the percentage of UVA rays. Those are the rays that go deeper into the skin and cause premature aging. So an SPF 30 with a UV star rating of 4 or 5 would be perfect. If you see the UVA in a circle, that means it meets an EU standard and you know you're safe. Also worth just checking your use by date on your bottle. I'm sure we've all done it. We go on holiday, we come back and we unload and unpack and we put our sun protection factor, our sunscreen in the bathroom cabinet ready for the next time. But do check those use by dates, because if they're out of date, then it is likely to be less effective than you're expecting it to be. As a rough rule of thumb, we recommend using about 2 tablespoons for the average adult human being out on a beach if you're in swimwear. So that gives you an idea of how much you should be applying. And do remember to apply throughout the day, particularly if you've been very sweaty or if you've been swimming, even if you have a water-resistant sun protection factor. And when do you need to protect yourself? Well, get into the habit of looking at the UV index on the weather forecast. The UV index ranges from 0 to 10. 1 or 2 is fine. That's what we'd find here in the winter and the autumn. But anything over a 3 and you need to protect yourself. Anything over a 7 and you need to think about added protection. So not just the sunscreen, but wide-brimmed hats, loose clothing covering as much of your body as you can, and really wherever possible stay out of direct sun. As a rough rule, I always say, look at your shadow. If your shadow is shorter than you, then that means the sun is very strong, and really you should be trying to get out of the sun and into the shade. Usually that would be between about 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. local time. We worry about sun protection because we know that excess exposure to the sun increases our risk of skin cancer. In fact, just 1 episode of sunburn as a child will double your risk of skin cancer as an adult. So really important that we take this message seriously. There are lots of different types of skin cancer. The most aggressive is called a melanoma, and we have around 16,000 cases of melanoma in the UK every year. That's more than 40 a day. Too much sun can also increase our risk of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Heat exhaustion is where you've had too much sun. You might be very thirsty, you may feel a little bit sick, you'll be very hot and sweaty, you may have a body temperature of around 38. You may feel that you have a rapid heart rate, or you're breathing more rapidly, and you'll certainly be going for a wee less often, and your urine is likely to be quite dark and more concentrated. Now, if you recognise those symptoms in yourself or anyone else, really important that you take action immediately in order to avert the development of heat stroke. So that involves removing yourself or that person from direct sun, go to a cool, shady place, plenty to drink, make sure that they're resting, stay with them, keep an eye on them, and spray them with cold water. Anything you can do to try and get that temperature down. If you can't manage that, then the risks of heat stroke are really very serious. Heat stroke is a medical emergency, and you would need to dial 999 or whatever the local emergency number is in your holiday destination. Heat stroke can actually mean that the person stops sweating. They've lost so much fluid they can no longer sweat, so their skin is dry. They may become very confused. Sometimes they can have a fit. So this is an absolute medical emergency and one that requires 999. If somebody should lose consciousness while you're waiting for the emergency services, then please put them in the recovery position. But of course, sun isn't all bad. We know that the sun lifts our mood. We all feel a bit brighter on bright sunny days, and that's a really good thing. But it's also good for our bone health. We need some sun exposure to develop vitamin D. So we can't get the vitamin D from our diet alone. Good dietary sources are things like oily fish and nuts, but we need the ultraviolet rays to convert the vitamin D into its active form and to protect our bones. In all honesty, we probably only need about 15 minutes a day of sun exposure, but people who cover themselves up for cultural or religious reasons, or those who are housebound, are at serious risk of vitamin D deficiency. And if we have a very grim grey winter, then it's quite common for British adults to be vitamin D deficient by the end of the winter. Certainly something worth asking your GP to check if you're feeling very weary towards the end of the winter, and make sure that you do get a good 15 minutes of sun exposure when the sun comes out.